What is up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of Truth Wire. Today, I'm here with a special guest. I will not be here with Pasta. He is out on assignment, and as you all know, give good energy for Pasta for his mom's recovery and what he's going through. And he put it out on X. So if you can all just send him messages of good, positive energy and love for him out there for him and his family that are going through some tough times right now. So, without further ado, a lot has been happening in the last 48 hours. And this, I think, has started in a way that was very much manipulated by the media. And I'm going to go over that right now. But it has escalated, and it was an escalation in terms of what was done and what was said. So there was this whole thing that exploded with Biden reportedly allowing Ukraine, giving the okay for Ukraine to use the US made ATACMS against Russia. Now, these are long range missiles, as we have talked about it numerous times on other streams, but France and the UK were allegedly reported to follow this. But this has been a threat that's been dangled in front of Moscow for a very long time. This has been talked about endlessly, especially being here. We have talked about this nonstop, the potentials of what would happen if there were continuously these weapons were fired into Russian territory, deep into Russian territory, and what would then Russia do? And of course, there has been the numerous times Putin has gone to the media and talked about this, the potential scenarios. And this is why the response from Russia when this occurred, according to Western media, was, well, we have already said what would happen. We would respond accordingly. And that's what actually happened today, is that the Ukrainian military actually sent 6 of these ATACMS missiles directly attacking Bryansk in Russia. This is Russian territory. And this has obviously now taken things to the next level. And this has been rapidly developing as, like I said, there was a shift today with Putin changing Russia's nuclear doctrine to state that an attack on Russia by a non nuclear power that is actually backed by a nuclear state would be considered an action taken by both. In other words, a joint attack against Russia by both. Now, Putin talked about, and we're going to watch a video of what he said before numerous times, that this isn't about stopping Ukraine from attacking Russia. They're obviously at war with Russia. This is more about what NATO would do, what the US would do, in admitting that they are a party to the conflict. And so the reality is that without the participation of the United States, the technology, particularly the satellites, this wouldn't be possible for Ukraine to do. So essentially, what he's saying is that the only way this would happen against Russia is with the direct help of a NATO country. So today, Lavrov also faced the media after this attack and stated that the West clearly wants an escalation. And that was after the 6 ATACMS were launched in Russia's Bryansk region. And this is also after Biden had reportedly lifted these restrictions that he said he would allow Ukraine to use these missiles. Now, like I said, the doctrine by the Russian doctrine in regard to nuclear weapons was completely changed in that method. So what is going on the background of all this is, while all of this was happening yesterday, the reports, all of these reports were coming from Western media, from US media. They were not ever officially confirmed by the United States. Now, you could say that with Ukraine using these missiles and attacking the Russian territory, that is a confirmation. However, you could also see this as a form of entrapment. What does that mean? I mean, it seems like they're trying to call Putin's bluff, right? Is Putin serious? Because on many occasions, Russia has said they will respond to certain things Ukraine has done, that certain red lines would be crossed. And Russia has at every corner tried to avoid nuclear war because they realize what would happen. I mean, there are preparations for potential, nuclear shelters going on right now. There are a lot of people asking questions as to what would happen. What would it look like in Europe? How quickly could this be? And there have been certain dramatics that have gotten people talking where people are like, well, Putin has to respond now and he has to go and attack, a tit for tat on Ukraine. But you have to look at it from the angle of, if Russia does that, then there could be a response, not necessarily from the United States, because why would the United States risk itself for Ukraine that it's sent to slaughter, essentially, right? And or the EU for that matter, because the EU has been in economic decline and is completely vulnerable now to all of this. So the United States wouldn't necessarily risk itself or any sort of big catastrophe for either the EU or Ukraine. However, there could be another type of escalation. And so Russia has to consider all of these elements. And these are things that we are going to discuss. Now, I do have to point out that there was already a backtracking, a sort of moonwalking behind what was said initially, because the French publication Le Figaro had actually removed the information about France and Britain, the UK, following the US's actions and allowing the Storm Shadow missile launches. And of course, that would be what Ukraine would want. It's what Ukraine has been asking for. Same thing with Germany and Scholz and the Taurus missiles that he has so far refused to supply. Now, the Times media source, also said that the US may not have given consent for Ukraine to use these Storm Shadow missiles. And that's an important note, because even though these Storm Shadow missiles, as I said, come from the UK, they are also using US technology. And therefore, it would require the UK to actually obtain quote unquote permission from Washington in order to use these missiles. So none of this, like I said, has been confirmed specifically by the White House. And Axio, who reported on this, did emphasize that this would just be limited to the Kursk region, which is the region that has been under altercation, the region that Russia has been expanding on. Make no mistake that this war, if we look at it in cold terms of losses and wins, is already a done deal for Ukraine. Ukraine has no way to win this in any shape or form. But my problem with how this came about is how it was put on the Biden administration. Let's be serious here. Joe Biden was in the middle of the jungle and walked away. Do you really think Joe Biden is calling the shots? This isn't a defense of Joe Biden, but it is rather a statement of fact. He's not calling the shots. We know who calls the shots in the United States, and that is the deep state. That is the military intelligence apparatus that governs pretty much everything, no matter who is president. And just a few days ago, the Trump administration met with the Biden team and they had interactions, and we had Joe Biden and Donald Trump exchange a warm sort of back and forth with each other. We also had Chuck Schumer have a heart-to-heart with Donald Trump. And I think a lot of people miss that point. They miss the fact that it's new boss, same as the old boss, but also a big club that none of us are in. And you cannot forget that, because right now there is a push to have this idea that Donald Trump's going to come in and save the day. And that may very well be because Donald Trump has said from the start that he wants to end this war. However, that doesn't mean that there will be peace. That just means the shifting of the focus to Iran, China, and Latin America. And that's something that's also not talked about, but I digress. Let's stick on this situation right now. So again, Lavrov has said that Russia will respond accordingly, whatever that means. People are waiting for what Russia is going to do. And so what is clear is that this is now the lame duck period for the Biden administration. However, in a month, essentially, because if we think about it, the rest of the time is Christmas, and the United States basically shuts down for Christmas. I mean, we have Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and nothing else matters after that. Like people just go in complete stupor for the holiday season. So there's not much time left for Joe Biden. So this isn't a Biden thing. I really believe that the Trump administration has been informed. However, you've seen the outrage by Republicans, and of course that is beneficial to them to make the Biden administration look like, not that they need any more help, they're doing a great job themselves, to make them look like more of a failure and to get everybody on their side. And when we come into the Trump administration, however, you need not forget that the Secretary of State is Marco Rubio, who is an anti-China hawk, is also anti-Iran, and also thinks that Russia is, it's a less than superior power. And then the National Secretary, Security Advisor for the Trump administration, his name is Mike Waltz. He is the one that thinks that Russia is a gas station with nukes, essentially. And he and Rubio both believe in the type of policy of ending the war, but not because they want peace, but rather because they're not seeing a benefit to it. And they want to end the war on their terms, not necessarily the terms that Russia might demand. So we'll see what happens on that. But let's go ahead and bring in our guest, Matt Weinglass. He is the host of where's Matt? There you are.
Right here.
He is the host of Homeless Left, and we covered the elections together recently. And Matt is in the center of it all, in the craziness in Los Angeles. And Matt, thank you for coming on. And I just want to get your quick take on what was said by Putin prior to the latest events, and I want to hear what you think of that now in terms of looking of what just happened. So if we could just play the video, Jayme, and then I'll get Matt's reaction right after. It should be on the doc, so let me know when you have it. There we go.
США муссируется тема о том, что
Can you see it, Matt? Or
может наносить удар в территорию России западными вооружениями большой дальности. И, судя по всему, это решение либо вот будет принято, либо, судя по всему, вообще уже принято. И эта вещь, конечно, экстраординарная. Хотелось попросить прокомментировать то, что происходит.
Происходит попытка подмены понятий, потому что речь не идет о разрешении или запрете киевскому режиму наносить удары по российской территории. Он и так наносит с помощью беспилотных летательных аппаратов и другими средствами. Но когда речь идет об использовании высокоточного оружия большой дальности западного производства, это совершенно другая история. Дело в том, что я уже об этом говорил, и любые эксперты это подтвердят, и у нас, и на Западе, наносить удары современными высокоточными системами большой дальности западного производства украинская армия не в состоянии. Она не может этого делать. Это возможно только с использованием разведданных со спутников, которыми Украина не располагает. Это данные только со спутников или Евросоюза, либо на Соединенных Штатах, в общем, с натовских спутников. Это первое. Второе, и очень важное, может быть, ключевое, заключается в том, что полетные задания в эти ракетные системы могут, по сути, вносить только военнослужащие стран НАТО. Украинские военнослужащие делать это не могут. И поэтому речь идет не о том, чтобы разрешать украинскому режиму наносить удары по России этим оружием или не разрешать. Речь идет о том, чтобы принять решение о том, что страны НАТО напрямую участвуют в военном конфликте или нет. Если это решение будет принято, это будет означать не что иное, как прямое участие стран НАТО, Соединенных Штатов, европейских стран в войне на Украине. Это их прямое участие. И это уже, конечно, существенным образом меняет саму суть, саму природу конфликта. Это будет означать, что страны НАТО, США, европейские страны воюют с Россией. А если это так, то, имея в виду изменение самой сути этого конфликта, мы будем принимать соответствующие решения, исходя из тех угроз, которые нам будут создаваться.
Matt, so what do you think of, especially of what he said in the last? And he said, if this happens, this is about whether NATO and these countries are actually directly involved, and we will take the appropriate response. What do you make of that statement now in the context of what just happened? What do you think could happen as a reaction?
Yeah, Fiorella, thanks for having me on with you on Truthwire. Yeah, this is very concerning, and we do have to look back at this statement that Putin made. This is back in September, and I believe it was a response because we knew that Biden was at the time meeting with British Prime Minister Starmer, and they were discussing this exact issue at that point. And like a lot of us here, and we covered it on the Homeless Left here in LA, and we understood the level of severity this would be if Biden had made that call back then. Somehow it didn't happen. We thought this was going to be the October surprise right before the election. If you guys remember, this was like, what is the Biden administration going to be pulling right before the election? And this did not happen. And we thought maybe it was because of Putin releasing the statement saying we have to respond accordingly. That you can't pretend that Ukraine sending weapons, that you can't say that you're not part of that. And he spelled it out very clearly here that we understand this is a direct attack from NATO countries, and we will have to respond to that. And so I think what happened, if you look, the order of happenings is after Putin made that statement, he actually went and drafted out a brand new, I guess you would call it, it's his nuclear doctrine. And that was drafted in September. It was only published this Tuesday. So he drafted it up based on knowing that this could happen. Tuesday, he publishes this. So this is, we can all see this now. Russia has a brand new nuclear doctrine that states very clearly that it will respond very, very harshly, very, very directly if anybody is using any sort of alliance with a NATO country with any weapons. So that it directly is talking about Ukraine, no matter where they shoot their missiles into, even though I know you mentioned it's just the Bryansk region, but this is something that he now has to respond to. So we're very, very concerned about this. The question I'm trying to figure out is what changed now? I mean, we know that the Biden lost the election. We know that some people are talking about the fact that let's see what the new mindset is. Let's get this thing as escalated as possible before Trump comes in. So we hear a lot of discussions like that. But what changed in the Biden administration? Was this Anthony Blinken? Was this somebody else that allowed this to happen? Was there more pressure from Britain? We're trying to discover this right now. But the fact that this new doctrine has been released, it was published on Tuesday, Putin's going to have to respond to this. What is that response going to look like? It's hard to tell. I mean, and again, you're talking about a lot of the different spins on this, whether the media is pushing this. The White House has not released a statement, but shouldn't they release some statement? If Biden did not allow this to happen, then there should be some sort of he should be condemning Ukraine for doing this, or somebody should say something publicly. The fact that there's been no official message from the White House is very concerning right now. So this is, and again, this could change at any moment. All of this just developed in the last 48 hours, like you mentioned. So we're just kind of looking at this very carefully right now and very on edge.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are understandably on edge because we're talking about, several nuclear countries, and we're talking about, as you mentioned, right, September. And Putin has done numerous interviews talking about this very subject. He did one in June as well, when he was talking about this very thing, what would happen. He's been asked this question numerous times, and he has always said, well, Russia, that would change things. It would, not only be an escalation, but of course now they're parties to the conflict, and this is what would happen. And essentially people have been talking about, World War III. But it is weird, Matt, and I'm glad you pointed out that there hasn't been a statement released by the White House, this has only been played in the media. And I find that very intriguing, because how has this happened then? If it didn't happen with the approval of the White House, the Pentagon, then whose approval did it happen on? And you mentioned Biden, but as I stated in the beginning, Biden is lost in the jungle. I mean, he literally was walked away into the jungle. And this is comical for many people, but for us, it's also shameful to a degree. Like, there's a little bit of like embarrassment, or a lot of embarrassment to say the least, when we have, a leader that's supposed to be present and representing the American public in some form or fashion, and he's just made a joke of every single day. And now we're dealing with very, very serious concerns. Do you believe that the reason the United States hasn't responded is because they really didn't allow it? Or do you believe that there's maybe some sort of internal conflicts going on within the US? Because we do have changing administrations coming in, yes. And outwardly, what we have seen from Republicans is that, they think that the Biden administration is trying to start World War III before they leave office. Therefore, Trump inherits a worse situation on that end, which is a possibility. On the other end, though, do we really expect the incoming administration not to know anything? And who's really running the show, Matt? When we talk about the deep state, we know that Joe Biden isn't the one with his hands on these buttons. That's just the reality, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we have Anthony Blinken, we have Victoria Nuland, we got people that are calling the shots right now. And like you said, with the change up, this team that's coming in January, it's going to take on the deep state. What does that mean when we're having assignments like Mike Huckabee and we're having assignments like Marco Rubio? I mean, these are the deep state. These are the neocons that, again, to remind people how Trump got into office in the first place, is he stood on a stage in 2015 and he called out all the neocons on that stage and says, you're all a bunch of warmongers, and you all you all are responsible for an illegal war in Iraq, and all you neocons. And then he went on and did that against Hillary too, was very clear about that. You're a neocon, you're a warmonger. We're going to change this. So the fact that a lot of people that voted for Trump and they think, oh, well, now this is his redo. This is his time to get it right. He made some mistakes last time. It doesn't look like a redo. It looks like the same neocons, even more so this time, are running the show. Just because he left out a couple of them, no John Bolton, okay, no Nikki Haley. I mean, she wasn't even really part of the first one anyway. No Mike Pompeo, okay, great, good job, Trump. No Mike Pompeo, but we have the rest of these guys calling these shots. And like, yes, these maneuverings that are happening right now, they're actually. You said this, Fiorella. Is there conflict right now inside the Biden administration? Probably. There's probably a lot of different debates and disagreements about how to maneuver this. And this might just be a big setup. This might just be hey, let's not release a statement. Let's kind of call Putin's bluff. He's not going to actually do anything big, especially if we don't say anything. Let's just keep it kind of like confusing for people. And let's kind of shake the cages a little bit here right before Trump comes in. Escalation. And then give him a whole bunch of stuff that he's not going to be able to handle, especially when he comes in. And this has been escalated even more so in the next 2 months. So, yeah, they're playing with fire. And I'm sure there's people saying, wait a minute, Putin does have to respond here. So I can imagine right now there is definitely some disagreements, some debates happening behind the scenes. But like you said about Biden wandering away in the jungle, he's definitely not a big voice at the table right now. He has nothing to do with these discussions. So what is being discussed by everyone else, that we're trying to figure out right now. But somebody needs to make a statement soon. Somebody does. And if it's nobody in that administration, maybe this is the time, if Trump wants to prove us wrong and say, no, we really are taking this on. We really do want to end this war with Russia, Ukraine. Okay. So why don't you say something, Trump? This would be an opportunity for him to condemn the actions of Ukraine right now. Now, I know he can't technically make any, moves as president because he's a president-elect, and that would be overstepping. But he could say something in regards to, when I get into office, there will be consequences for what you are doing right now. That I can assure you. If he released that could go a long way in at least giving us all a sense of a little bit of calm that we're not about to get annihilated.
Yeah, I there's just it's crazy when you think about it as to who's in charge, and it's the
Mhm.
absolute worst people that you could possibly imagine in charge of so many vital decision making. I wanted to get more on, you mentioned Putin has to respond because this is
Mhm.
a question that is being talked about very much so in Moscow from different points of view. People are urging that Putin needs to actually do something, and that Russia has been extremely over diplomatic, has been extremely um, reserved in their actions, that they have not acted out of spite. That in similar ways, how people were waiting on Iran and are waiting on Iran still to act in terms of Israel. The same way people have been waiting, spectators, at least analysts have been saying that, hey, Putin needs to do something now because otherwise, his word isn't going to have any weight. And so there are many debates here being had about that. If Putin does something, could that escalate things then and get back at Russia as a whole, at the Russian people as a whole? And if he doesn't do anything, then that's also going to be a problem, because then it will lessen his word, and it will seem like he's not going to do what he said he would do, what he's been saying he's going to do. But he has never been specific about what would be done. He has
Mhm.
simply said that Russia would take the needed response depending on the scenario. And I think that's something that people are missing, that he said, it doesn't mean that now Putin's going to launch a nuke. What it means is that there will likely be a retaliation toward Ukraine and towards perhaps those who aided Ukraine, which is the big issue here. It's not just Ukraine, it is the US functioned machinery, the missiles that have been used against the people of Russia. It is, the threats still coming from NATO. That those are the things that Putin has to respond to, because they've responded to Ukraine many times. But now the question is, what is it going to be? Is it going to be a military targeting? This is where I feel Russia will go. Russia, very much like Iran, will not just go and nuke Kiev or something like that. This is what people kind of imagine will happen,
Mm.
but that's not realistic, in my opinion, in my analysis, and my knowledge of the Russian government, of Russian actions, and how they're very much diplomacy first. Do you think that such a response, just going after military targets, will suffice? Do you think that that will be a reaction that will send a message, or do you think that perhaps Russia's going to have to do something else that shows that they are serious, or the United States and NATO, essentially, forget Ukraine, are going to continue pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing?
Hmm. Based on Putin's history and his pattern of behavior, I mean, he has shown incredible restraint of everything that we've done to provoke him up until now. So if we go on his pattern of behavior, we can say, some say he's playing this like, master chess game of just calm and just focus and not taking bait. So in that regard, yeah, I could see a particular military targeting operation on his end would be in line with what we've seen from him before. Is that enough to send a message? I don't know. Now, look, we saw that there were 6 of these ATACMS that were fired today from Ukraine. I think we saw that we know for sure that 5 of them got immediately intercepted. So, maybe it's a matter of the assessment of damage there that can justify if he can take out some military targets, and he can maybe cause a little more damage than what was done his way. That could send a message of we will retaliate a little stronger than what you just did to us. Because he's got, they got great defense system there, and I was happy to see that. Okay, well, at least he immediately stopped that. Once you start getting casualties, then you got more problems. So we have to look at at that. So yes, I do think that would be aligned with his behavior up until now, and he doesn't want to take the bait on something that's going to again lead to this a nuclear annihilation, and then we're all done anyway. So it's like you got to be real careful there. But it's like one psychopath, entity going against somebody who's shown incredible restraint and resilience and just a calm throughout this whole thing, which we have to be very grateful for that he's shown that this whole way. I mean, seriously, I mean, or we wouldn't even be sitting here having this conversation right now, Fiorella.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about the defense knocking down 5 of them, and and that, because that's an important point, as you mentioned. I think the results of that, the fatalities, that the sort of thing. And when you hear what's happening, when you see it on social media and people are talking about nuclear war, World War III, and I do think we're closer than ever. And I do think that's a reality, not just with Russia, Ukraine, but as I said, with Iran, Israel, and that aspect, and China and Taiwan. We're at a point where at any of these spheres, we could go into that disastrous scenario. So in Putin, we have seen a very very thoughtful individual in terms of how he conducts his affairs politically and militarily as the leader of the Russian Federation. And he has shown so much restraint. And that is a really good word to really say that, because for me, looking at it from the perspective here, it does appear that this is an entrapment of sorts. It does appear it is a way to push Russia to do something, yet again, that would potentially be used as an excuse to attack it. And I think that Russia has been extremely aware of this fact, of this manipulation by the West to try and push it to this point where, oh, so we did this, now are you going to do something? Are you going to do something? It's like the bully in the playground that just continues and pushing and pushing and hitting everybody until somebody stands up to them, right? And I think we have seen the standing up by Russia, but within a certain measured type of response. And what may happen now, I think some people who sit at home on the computer, or who are just saying a lot of things, well, Russia needs to act, need to realize that we're not talking about a video game. We're not talking about just these scenarios for fun. I think people sometimes get lost in the moment of it all, and really don't understand that we're talking about literal nuclear annihilation. If Putin were somebody else, somebody more volatile, somebody more emotionally completely just somebody that goes off, we wouldn't be here. As you said, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We would be completely setting up for war. And I think that definitely has not been the case, thankfully. I mean, we do live in a crazy timeline, but I'm very glad that definitely hasn't been the case. Now, because you mentioned how what the potential reaction could be, I want to hear Sergei Lavrov's most recent statement on this. He did come out and talk about what happened, and gave a little bit of a breakdown as to what they think. And this is, you'll be able to hear the audio, guys, as well on this. It's not in Russian. So Jayme, when you have it up, that'd be great. But did you want to say anything else on that, Matt?
No, let's hear it. I would like to talk about after. Yes.
Okay.
You're asking me questions about whether what New York Times published is truth, or an attempt just to speculate on this information about the attacks against the Bryansk region, where these missiles were used. It's a signal saying that they want an escalation, and using these highly technological missiles without Americans. President Putin spoke about this many times. It would be impossible to use them without Americans. And he warned how our position changed if these long-range missiles, 300-kilometer range missiles, will be authorized to use against our country. They now say that we are going to strike you as far as 300 kilometers deep. And everyone is saying that the authorization is there. Even Borrell said that it's official, and Europeans, they had this discussion, and then they decided that each of them will make their own decision in this regards, whether they authorize to use their long-range weapons for Ukrainians. I'm not going to speculate on this topic. We have our nuclear doctrine that was officially published, and it says now officially, now it's a law, that all the things that President spoke about a month or slightly more, and I hope that they are going to read this doctrine, not how they read the UN Charter, seeing only things that they need, but they will read the entire doctrine in all its interconnectedness. And whether if someone asked me about it, so someone asked me on the sidelines whether it's true or not. I said, I don't know. We care about our own security, first of all, and all the things that we need to know. We told those who are floating these ideas, we told all we had to say, and now it's officially enshrined in the official doctrine.
So Matt, yeah, what do you make of his statements? I mean, I think it just seems reflective of how Russia responds to things very calmly, very much like, okay, well, we put it all out there, and now this happens, so it's all out there. Putin has talked about it. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, and let's remember this. What is officially now in their law, their new doctrine, was drafted in September. So this is something like they take their time to get the words right, to get the approach right. It is a game of chess for them. I think we're playing this crazy game, like this crazy physical, boxing match. But Russia's playing chess. They're saying, look, let's take our time. What's the next move? They drafted this thing out. I do like the way he articulated it. I think it was coming from a place of careful consideration. We're hearing that, they are strictly committed to preventing nuclear war. At the same time, the retaliation, we feel it is inevitable, but what does that even look like? I don't think that's clear here, but I do think this is exactly what we should expect, as we were saying, from Putin, and the fact that this has been put out there. He's just reiterating it. There's another part of that I want to mention, Fiorella. I think it's either later in the speech. I saw it earlier today, but he made a statement, a comparison to the genocide that we are committing in Gaza, and he just wanted to throw out the numbers. And I heard him. He had mentioned the deaths in Gaza for a year have doubled. All the deaths in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, everything's in the last 10 years since 2014 on both sides. All of the deaths, we have outdone that just in Gaza in this last year. And he wanted to make that point to show what is the West really, what are their priorities? What are they really focusing on? What do they really care about if they're ignoring one thing and escalating another? But I do think that's the statement that stands out the most, was at the beginning of that when he said the West wants an escalation. That is absolutely clear. And I don't think anybody can argue that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point to make, and I'm glad that it's being brought up, because the United States, our government is essentially causing mass death, genocide, and destruction, because just like with Ukraine, they are giving the weapons to Israel. They are giving the funding to Israel to go commit these crimes in Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon, where they're targeting civilians. And here, when it comes to Ukraine using these weapons, Ukraine has been documented to use these American, European weapons from, the UK on civilians. And we have seen this time and time again. And so the hypocrisy of the United States, I also need to point out the accusations of the North Koreans being in Ukraine, because even if that were true, which they haven't really followed with any sort of tangible evidence, even if that were true, what's the difference that between that and what the United States and NATO are all doing in helping Ukraine? what's the difference? I mean, there are US troops, there are Western troops, there's mercenaries, there's different groups. It's essentially, I mean, we know this is a proxy war, but really it's not at this point. At this point, as Lavrov mentioned, as Putin mentioned months ago, and as pretty much everybody here knows, this is a direct war between NATO and Russia more than anything else. Ukraine aside, Ukraine is just cannon fodder, unfortunately. Speaking in cold terms here, every last Ukrainian, it doesn't matter. They're having to chase people down the street to get them to fight, and people don't want to because they know this is a slaughter mission. It's a suicide mission. And so with Lavrov bringing this up, it also cements that it's, these hypocritical issues by the West. And what I'm seeing also, Matt, is Ukraine is now pushing the US to lead some sort of military intervention for Ukraine's behalf against Russia. Do you think that the United States would do that? Would go ahead and jump into like a direct war with Russia over Ukraine?
If we do that, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it would be horrible, but we would make that justification, and there would be a way to spin it. You would say, "Oh, we're only doing it's no, it's only a limited. It's just it's an Overwatch scenario. We're not really in combat. We're just putting the troops out. We're just doing this. We're just doing." There'd be a way to spin it where it's not really that. Which we're doing right now, right? We're saying we're not really at war with Russia. It's Ukraine. We're helping them and democracy this and blah 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 that down to the last Ukrainian. But we have been funding everything. So the fact that yes, I do believe we could do that and justify it, and that'd be really scary. But I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that I don't see the United States leaving it all or risking much for Ukraine. This is why we use proxies, right? Whether it's terrorists, actual terrorists, Al Qaeda, those sort of actual white helmet types that we used in Syria or in West Asia and other parts of the world. We have backed Nazis. We have backed Zionist Israel. We use proxies no matter what to get the job done. And I don't see it much different. There would have to be, I think, something that the US would see as a gain to go to a war with Russia, because they do know that behind Russia there is China. And as much as people talk about multipolarity and all of these things, none of that's going to happen if we have a sort of nuclear catastrophe that we could potentially have. And China's economy is very intrinsically tied to the US economy. So when we talk about all these things about potential war, people need to remember that there is this desire to not have war, even by those who are the most warmongering of them all, because it would just destabilize their economic profits. It would destabilize what they're doing in a way, just keeping the war going, but contained enough to where not everybody blows each other up. It is kind of their game. And the way they do this is via proxies. But with Russia now talking about their doctrine and rewriting it and revising it and doing all these things, they're essentially saying, no more of that BS, no more of that. We're going to put it out clear. You've been getting away with it for too long. And now, this is what's going to happen, essentially. What is the sentiment over there, Matt? Oh, did you have something to say?
No. Go. No, actually, that's actually good. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you what are people feeling like in the United States? Is there, because I know LA is a very much it's La La Land, right? People don't talk about this stuff, everybody's in their own world, but just, from what you've heard, have you seen any sort of reaction to this in general? Because this, I think, has been very much a reactionary type of thing, at least in media, social media as well.
So the reaction here is very strange. It's been strange since February 2022, when Putin, I guess, decided one morning to wake up and take over the world. That was the initial reaction here, as we know, and everyone got on board. Everybody put their Ukrainian flags in their social medias. A lot of them have not taken them down since. We know we just got out of this election. We know there's a lot of people on the Kamala vote blue, no matter whose side, that are extremely distraught right now. A lot of them are suicidal. I'm not over exaggerating this. That's what's happening here in LA right now. They're sharing suicidal hotlines with each other. This is not a joke. This is happening right now in the entertainment industry right here. And they are looking for coping mechanisms. If you guys don't know, there was a new platform has been started. It's called Blue Sky. It's for all the people who feel like they have been wronged by this new Hitler 2 coming in. Well, it's the same, I guess the same Hitler from the first time, but this time he's more of a Hitler, and he's about to go round up anybody who's LGBTQ and anybody who's undocumented. He's rounding them up right now, and they're all prepared for that. So when you talk about this actual escalation of the current administration of our sitting U.S. president that is walking away into a jungle right now, while these big decisions are being made and missiles are being fired into Russia right now. No, I have to say, Fiorella, the people here have no idea what is happening at all. And if you go onto their new platform, Blue Sky, which is, I guess, is some sort of FU to Elon, saying, "Oh, we don't like billionaires anymore," even though they love Mark Zuckerberg. Let's give them that. They love Mark Zuckerberg. They hate Elon, so let's go start a new platform called Blue Sky. I went on there to check it out, and all they're doing is more boo-hoo-hooing, constant boo-hoo-hooing about how they were wrong. Democracy's gone. Trump's Hitler. And then I'm seeing posts about this right now. And I am just, my blood is boiling, Fiorella, if you can't tell, thinking about what they are sharing on their brand new platform that's supposed to be misinformation free. And all they're doing is saying, look what's happening right now. Russia is escalating war with the US and Ukraine. Holy crap. Look what, oh, and we just elected Hitler to come in. Oh, this is great. Good news. Well, thank God we got people in charge right now that are going to hopefully fix this before January. That's what they're sharing right now on their new platform. That is disgusting. It sucks. I'm not mad at them. I think they've been captured. But the fact that they can't understand what's going on now, we shouldn't be surprised at that, because they haven't understood what was going on from the beginning of this thing. They have no concept of historical context. They think Putin woke up one day and decided to take over the world, and that's all they know. And this one-dimensional thinking has led them to their confusion and their depression, their sharing of suicidal hotlines, and starting this new platform, which is all one big ball of disinformation that they've created themselves based on the emotion that was fed to them with a bunch of joy that I guess was pumped into their veins about 6 months ago. And here we are. So that's my take on here in Hollywood. The rest of us and the rest of the country, I don't know. I think overall, it's hard for them to understand it. It's hard for them to understand what's happening right now.
It's really sad, Matt, because I also just got back from the United States, and people are, I saw the election, and we talked about this, right? I saw how people really had a hard time with it. Like, they didn't know who to vote for. And yeah, I saw that a little bit in 2016, but not like this. I do think people are just kind of, they don't know what's going to happen. There's so much uncertainty in general. And, I was in the nice part of the US. I was in Florida. And I say the nice part because it's not LA, it's not as chaotic. It's a little bit more subdued, but it has its problems as well in terms of just the complete economic decline and all of these things. And I think, unfortunately, for the majority of Americans, they're not going to wake up until there is a bomb literally dropped on our soil. And I'm not wishing that. Of course not. I have family, I have friends, I have, so much in the United States, and I don't wish that for innocent people. But I do think that there really doesn't seem to be this level of understanding of where we're at right now in the world. There seems to be a complete and utter avoidance. And that's why the social issues without any sort of economic backing are what are tribalized and used by both the liberals and the conservatives. Like, I mean, these are the only thing they want to talk about, because these things are not actually going to change the dynamic of things. They're not going to change the economics or the foreign policy aspects of it all. So that's why these are the issues that everybody's arguing about. Meanwhile, we're on the brink of nuclear war from multiple fronts, and nobody in the real world outside of our political world here on X, on Rumble, on YouTube, wherever you're watching this from, outside of these people that listen to us and watch and like to discuss these things, the majority of people have no idea who any of us are, who any of these people that we talk about are. They have no idea. Social media isn't real life, guys. Really. Like I keep, I have friends that are not at all involved politically. And I remind myself, like, holy crap, like how if I can't, if they aren't they're paying attention more than others, but not, to the point where we are, I guess. And if we can't even get people that, we know to understand like how bad things are, then what is that going to take, right? And it is a very terrible feeling to feel like we can't stop it, but I do think it is on the American people, the American public, to do what we can to stop it. But I just don't think a petition or a strongly worded letter to your congressman is going to do anything. And I'm sorry, but I just think that's a waste of time. I think we're past that point of just doing all of that. I get it, but I do think we're past that point, Matt.
I mean, if there's a way we can rally people up to get angry and to get scared about the real stuff that's happening, not the fake stuff, not Hitler's coming to round you up. No, the real stuff that's happening right now. How do we get them to do that? You mentioned that you think, well, you said if the bombs come and they're on their way and we have the couple minute warning before it's all over, then they'll see. No, actually, I don't think they would see then. They would still say, oh, that's Trump's fault that's happening. So we were right. As we're all getting annihilated, they'll still think they'll double down and say, we were right. We told you. Look what Trump did. He just destroyed the world. I think the way we're going to get people's attention is maybe just go back to one simple principle. And let's give them everything that they think. Let's give them the simplification of democracy in Ukraine and America's spreading it. We're protecting it. Let's give them the whole thing. It's not a neo-Nazi battalion, the Azov battalion. That doesn't exist. That's Russian propaganda. You're right. Okay, let's give you all of that. This nation needs to be protected at all costs. Here's the principled problem. You cannot, as the leader of this country, who just got your administration just got voted down. The majority of people said no. You can't, in your last 2 months, you cannot make these type of decisions for the people of this country when we're not being attacked, we're not being threatened. You cannot make these decisions on behalf of another country. That should be by international law. That should be illegal. We should be looking at Biden and saying, you can't do that. That's not okay. So maybe if there's a way to just get that message out to people and give them all the other stuff they want, but tell them this: you can't do that on an election year. And it's Thanksgiving time, right before we're getting to the holidays here. You cannot do that when a new president's coming in January. You can't risk all of our lives for another country. Not okay.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say what should be done because they just don't listen. I mean, during the war, before the war in Iraq or after, people were protesting en masse, and that didn't do anything. It's a matter of us not having the power, right? What was it? The V for Vendetta quote: the government, the people shouldn't fear their government. The government should fear its people. And I think that quote, we're coming to a point in the United States where that should apply. You should begin to understand that they don't need you. They're not afraid of you. They have us in their hands because people fall so easily for these manipulations, like, yeah, sure. Biden, but Biden is really not in charge here. Who is making these decisions? Who is trying to start a war? Who is trying to escalate things further? And if not escalating things, why they clearly are, but if not just for that, what exactly is behind these moves that they're doing at this moment against Russia? And I think those answers will come, but what I do see is that the American public is being manipulated entirely, and has been throughout not just these elections, but throughout the last few years with all of these lies that we've been told about so many things. And, getting you to believe that somebody else on the other end will save you. like the Trump administration, or then, as these people you say are crying and are suicidal because Trump, Hitler won, getting them to believe that the Democratic Party and Harris or AOCIA, who will probably run in the next 4 years. Yeah, it's endless. It's endless, and people have to stop participating. I think that's my thing. People have to stop giving this idea of false hope that is extremely detrimental. And I want to pose a question to you in ending this stream, because I do want to get your take on this. There has been a question that we've talked about this entire time is, the United States hasn't said anything. The White House hasn't released an official statement, but there was a statement released by the State Department Assistant Secretary Brian Nichols, who told the popular mainstream Brazilian newspaper O Globo today that these strikes on Kiev, as authorized by Joe Biden, might encourage Russia to negotiate peace. How do you think? I want to, you're there. Maybe you can sort of, I don't get some sort of brainwaves from Brian Nichols here. How, in what way could these strikes possibly force Russia to negotiate for peace? In what scenario, in what dimension, Matt, could this possibly happen? This is the genius that we have in the States right now.
There is no scenario in which this would lead to a negotiation. It's the exact opposite. They want to make it practically impossible when Trump gets in to be able to go back to the current negotiation that's already ready to go. They want to make it absolutely impossible. So it's the opposite of that. Why would he say that? Is he that dumb? I don't think so. I think this is about playing this game that they can send this message and keep fooling half the country here that Putin, it's in Putin's court to take a negotiation. We've done everything we could. We've done everything we could. He's the a-hole who's not listening to reason. He's the guy that wants global domination. We're trying to give him. So that's just propaganda for half the country, so they can feel better about their blue sky platform, where they can pretend that Putin's the one that's out of control. That's all that is. And on top of that, I mean, they've been doing this the whole time, Fiorella. They've been saying these statements that are backwards the whole way about we're the ones that want the peace, and Putin is just out of control. And then they say the most ridiculous things, like I think Zelensky just said that he's perfectly okay with the fact that Ukraine can handle this thing, even if U.S. cuts off funding. We got this. We're this close. So this like just delusion, or at least a sentiment of delusion, which I don't know if they're actually delusional, but it's the sentiment of delusion that it's not what we're looking at. Don't believe your lying eyes. And that's been consistent the whole way. So I guess we should expect nothing less from Nichols on this.
Okay. And you just brought one last question to me. So what happens if, Donald Trump comes in, right? They manage to, I guess, extend this whole scenario of Russia does something, but, that's it. And then Zelensky continues begging the US and the rest of the NATO contingent to join in and go after Russia. And this, extends into the Trump administration. What happens then if Donald Trump comes in and says, okay, that's it. No more. We're not going to fund the Ukrainian war. We're not going to fund Ukraine anymore. That's it. We're done with this, because they do have control of the House, the Senate, and the executive, something that Obama had, a decade ago or so. What happens? Do you think that is, to me, that could very much well be also where they're taking us, right? Oh, well, yes, now this is done. Look what Trump did. He's the peacemaker. He's the guy. He got us out of this war. What's next then? What could potentially be the next thing that you see happening in the US? Because if you know anything, you know that the war is just wars don't really end. They just go somewhere else.
Exactly. So all we got to do is look at what happened with Afghanistan and see that when you cut off a war, even 20 years of wasting money and, you know, funneling money into the military industrial complex and the warmongers' pockets and just and audits of money that are just gone. They just trillions of dollars just disappear. We know that money doesn't go then get put back into the economy and put back into the American taxpayers' pockets. No, it goes into another location. So yeah, we will follow that pattern. When Afghanistan ended, you just take that money, you funnel it into the Ukraine war. So we should have seen that coming right in that moment, that was the next thing. So what happens when Trump gets in? And if we're able to just cut the money train off and end this thing, you would then see the money, instead of being spent there and allocated to Zelensky, you will see it either go over more into the pockets of Israel to go against Iran, or you're going to see an escalation for China. One of those two is going to be escalated more, if not maybe a little of both. That's where we're going to see that money go. And that's, I think that's best case scenario. That's given that in the next 2 months, we don't see any casualties happen. We talk casualties. If there's something that gets by Putin in any way, shape, or form, that's going to change the ability for Trump to even end this thing when he comes in. So that is best case scenario. What I'm seeing from my vantage point, Fiorella, that we just end this thing and funnel the money into the next one.
Yeah, and ending this thing, I think, is going to be, I think, a process. I honestly don't see I agree that is best case scenario, because I don't see it ending that quickly. You know, there's the process of Zelensky. Zelensky refuses to have elections, by the way, so the democratic Ukraine, you know, won't have elections. He's in power. Who's going to take the fall? What's this going to look like? Is Russia just going to, what conditions will Russia agree to? They're not going to agree. They've said it as well. They would have agreed to less harsh conditions before, but now, you know, and each day that passes with each escalation, things are just not going to go back to a point where Ukraine will like it ever again, because what's left of Ukraine is not at all what Ukraine was, and it's not going to be what it will be. But hey, the United States doesn't care. Ukraine is the ground for experimentation with biolabs. It's the ground for experimentation with a lot of things, a lot of crime, and therefore, you know, that's its purpose. They don't really care about the Ukrainian people. And so now that we're here, that'll be interesting to see how this develops, Matt. And I really do hope that we don't break into any sort of, you know, nuclear war, and people like Putin are going to take some flack for perhaps being more, having more restraint, but to the benefit of the entire world, I think, to a degree. So we'll see what happens. Thanks very much for coming on and having this discussion and stuff, Matt. Where can people find your work? Where can they watch you? And all that good stuff.
Yeah, the Homeless Left. We are on Rumble every Thursday. We go live every Thursday, 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. We just do a non-tribal approach to news, just as you do, Fiorella and Craig Pasta, Jardula. We work with you guys. We work with Craig, and we want to give our love and you know, thoughts out to Craig as well, and hope, you know, he gets through his this time right now, this challenging time. But we keep doing the work. We do it every week, so you guys can follow us there. YouTube, we've been terminated on YouTube. So Homeless Left, because we have these discussions, we were just getting going on YouTube, and they cut us off because we can't challenge Israel, and apparently can't have discussions about medical health and medical freedom. And we can't. So we're battling a censorship industrial complex. So we just got to do it the best we can. So we do appreciate your guys' support and coming on with us and the Homeless Left. You can follow us on Twitter as well. So those are the platforms we're on, and we continue to you know, get the message out of, you know, anti-censorship, anti-war, free speech, and be about the people. That's what we're about. A non-tribal approach to news, a non-tribal approach to life. That's what we like to do. And thank you, Fiorella, for having me on today and being a good you know, inspiration for all the other independent media people out there, and the people that, you know, that are thinking of starting a channel or thinking of doing something like this. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength. It takes resilience. It also takes a team. So we appreciate the relationships. And again, thank you for having me on today and helping us. And the homeless left, we're in your corner on Truthwire and Convo Couch, and for Craig Pasta as well. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. And like I said, I hope to see you in person, to meet you. I hope we get that opportunity, and I hope everybody sits at home and kind of also takes a breath and tries to look at things a little bit more calmly and realistically, and really understand, like, from here, from Moscow, people don't want war. People definitely don't want nuclear war. They don't see the United States as the enemy. They don't see the American people as the enemy, specifically the American public. And I think there's a lot more commonality with people here than others might think. And it's great. It would be great for many people to one day get to visit, Russia and really see what it's all about. So thank you all for tuning in. And thanks, Matt, for coming on and having these really very good points he made. And everybody, if you could please follow us on Rumble, because YouTube is YouTube, to say the least. And also follow me on X if you haven't followed me, and follow me on Telegram, Fiorella in Moscow. And yes, thanks to Jayme, the engineer, for getting us through this whole thing. And anybody, please, on watching on Rockfin or any other platform, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Take care and be safe.